Professor Dr. Manjri Gaharat, Vice President, International Pharmaceutical Federation, Vice President, Chairperson, Community Pharmacy Division, Indian Pharmaceutical Association. She will be delivering the session on repurposing of the drugs. Introducing her main areas of work are pharmacy education, community pharmacy, and consumer medicine. She advocates for larger role of practicing pharmacists in healthcare. She is instrumental in establishing a public-private partnership engaging community pharmacists in TB DOTS program. She leads IPA Responsible Use of Medicine campaign and is involved in professional development of pharmacists through training and projects. She works along with academia, Pharmacy Council, Chemist Association, consumer organization, NGOs, and IPA branches all across the country and is a regular pharma columnist in regional newspaper and has a book, Aushad Ban, that is medicine awareness, to her credit. She is recipient of 2 global awards. One is Fellow of International Pharmaceutical Federation in year 2016 and Ishitade Award of Federation of Asian Pharmaceutical Association in the year 2018 in recognition of her services to the community pharmacy and pharmacy profession. She is also recipient of Fellowship of IPA and several other awards from social and professional organizations in the country. She has traveled to more than 25 countries for professional work as invited speaker, panelist, trainer, or paper presentation at various podiums. It is an honor to have you here with us, ma'am. I now hand over the session to you. Please, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you for a very nice introduction. And I'm very happy to be in the program organized by Anand College of Pharmacy. I have visited your college some time ago, and I was very happy with the way the college is functioning and having their own achievements. So I will be sharing the screen, and so give me some time. Before I start with my session, let me tell you that I'm presenting and I have my screen open here, and so when I accepted this invitation, let me confess in the beginning itself that when I accepted this invitation, I was like, this is kind of a program where we are introducing different topics, but I didn't know that this is totally research focused program of 1 week. And somewhere, as you have heard my introduction, I am not a hardcore researcher. And my main areas, as Madam has told you, I'm more in consumer education and I work with community pharmacists. So maybe I have written some articles for consumers on drug repurposing, and that's why maybe I got this invitation. But I'm happy to, maybe this will be a kind of a light session for you, kind of a storytelling session maybe. So I hope you like it. And since I'm not in a hardcore research, so I have not done anything in repurposing as such myself. So, but I've been looking at this area of drug discovery, and that has always fascinated me, especially now during COVID time. There was more attention and there is more attention on drug repurposing. So outline of my presentation will be what is drug repurposing, or it is also called as repositioning, and what are the advantages of it, what are the different examples, and what are the types of drug repurposing, and what is happening in COVID-19. Now, as everybody, I think all of my colleagues who are here, I'm sure all of you know that the repurposing is a strategy for identifying new uses of the old drugs. So the old drugs are approved, or maybe they're investigational, or maybe they were never used. And this new indication will be outside the scope of the original medical indication. So this will be something, a new use for the old drugs. So this strategy offers various advantages over developing an entirely new drug for a given indication due to the high failure rates and the cost involved in the traditional drug development procedures. Many researchers are primarily focusing now on drug repurposing strategy. So I want to tell you now, this is becoming kind of the first choice kind of a strategy for finding the new drugs than starting from the scratch, and especially for the incurable diseases, for the rare diseases, or we call them orphan diseases. So this is kind of a, just to summarize this drug repurposing method, this is kind of a smart, fast track drug discovery, or you can say this is a shortcut method to find the new drugs. This approach basically utilizes the combined efforts of activity-based, that means experimental methods, or in silico-based or computational approaches. Bioinformatics plays a big role in this, and so to develop the to identify the new uses of drug molecules on a rational basis. Even though I'm saying here on a rational basis, many a times it has happened that a random screening has led to a new drug discovery, random screening of the old drugs. It is therefore believed to be an emerging strategy, as I said earlier, where existing medicines having already been tested very safe in humans are redirected based on a valid target molecule to combat particularly rare, difficult to treat diseases or the neglected orphan diseases. So there are many advantages that everybody can think of. These are known molecules, so we already know what is the side effect profile. So we already know the devil in it, right? So we know what is the good part of it, what is the bad part of it. It is this type of drug discovery is time saving, low cost, minimum risk of failure, maximizes the therapeutic value of a drug, and increases the success rate. So drug repurposing, as I said, it is also sometimes called as repositioning, is an effective alternative approach to the traditional drug discovery. Just in terms of cost, saving in terms of cost, if you want to discuss, it cost approximately $300 million to bring a repurposed drug to the market. But if we look at the new drug discovery totally, the traditional process, it is like $2.6 billion dollars are required for that. So here is 85% saving when we are going for a drug which is repurposed than the drug which is developed by a total traditional new drug discovery and development process. There is, of course, the saving in time. While appropriate studies are still required to obtain the regulatory approval, we still have to do the clinical trials. Clinical trial phase 2, 3 definitely are required, 2, 3, 4. But since already the duration of the discovery phase for a repurposed drug becomes shorter because safety and toxicology profile is known, those studies are already done, preclinical studies are already done in the original indication. A significant number of drugs are being repurposed for rare diseases or the conditions which lead to many developers being attracted by incentives associated with the obtaining orphan drug designation. There are, especially US FDA, gives special incentives for this drug repurposing method to find the drugs for the rare diseases or neglected diseases, because there are very few researchers who are concentrating on the rare diseases. So what happens is that small population of patients, they are never going to get the treatment. If like say Kala Azhar, there are so many drugs, especially orphan diseases which are there, rare diseases which are especially in the countries like Africa. So that small patient population will never get any treatments. So US FDA gives special incentives for and encourages drug repurposing for those type of diseases. When we like continuing with the advantages, so safety advantage, as I said, there is already known side effect profile. So we know what is good, what is bad in that drug. So existing drugs that are either approved or have been shown to be safe in late stage trials, but have failed to meet endpoints of their originally targeted medications, they can leverage their inherently reduced development risk into the potentially new indications. They can do so if they can be proven to be effective in the new indication and also sufficiently differentiated against the standard of care. Market potential. So market potential advantage, this will not apply to all the examples of the repurposed drugs, but some of the drugs became blockbusters, which are repurposed. So to one example here, I would like to say thalidomide. Everybody knows thalidomide was given for morning sickness in the pregnant females in Germany and UK in 1960s. And then you know what happened. The thalidomide tragedy is very well known, Focomelia, etc. And then it came back after 20-30 years, which is repositioned now. And that is used now for the leprosy, skin lesions in leprosy. And also it is being tried and investigated for different types of cancer like multiple myeloma. So this became a blockbuster drug for the company known as Celgene. And also Revlimid. Revlimid is a lenalidomide, that is a derivative of thalidomide. Even that has been a very profitable drug for the company. I will not give an example here, but I must say Viagra. Everybody knows sildenafil. Sildenafil is a repurposed drug. We'll look at it later. But that also became a blockbuster, like $2 billion sale happened for sildenafil, Viagra, in the first year of its launch. Now let's go towards different examples. And I can't stop appreciating aspirin, the good old drug. It is really a fascinating drug, a wonder drug it is called as. Almost over 120 years ago, in 1910 or so, 1900, it became the first drug to be made synthetically. And after all the procedures, it came into market in around, I think, 1910-12. And its marketing led to the foundation of the modern pharmaceutical industry. It is still a benchmark drug against which analgesics are measured. New NSAIDs, effectiveness, potency, etc. is measured. Now, from 1917 to 1970s, aspirin continued to be used as an analgesic, antipyretic, anti-inflammatory, so like a typical NSAID use. But the research was on. The researchers had so much interest in this molecule that they were researching aspirin for different uses. And in 1970 sometime, it showed that it has a very good antiplatelet activity and it can be used to substantially reduce the risk of coronary thrombosis, DVT, myocardial infarction, angina pectoris, and all that. So it is now used more, everybody knows that it is more used now as an antiplatelet drug. If we wouldn't have found, or if aspirin wouldn't have got repurposed for antiplatelet drug, I don't know where aspirin would have been right now when we look at the list of NSAIDs. Because we now don't use aspirin as an NSAID. There are so many newer molecules. So aspirin got new life. So this is like a rebirth of aspirin when it is antiplatelet use was discovered. And now everybody, like so many patients are taking 75 mg. That too, it was realized that a low dose of aspirin is enough for this antiplatelet use. So aspirin is a very fascinating drug, and researchers are still continuing to look at different possible uses for this. And one of the very important one I feel is cognitive decline and dementia, which is like an Alzheimer's disease, all those related things, which is a major problem today. In even the senile dementia is very common, not only in elderly, but it starts much earlier. So, and also for cataract, that is also very interesting. Intestinal cancer, this is under investigation. So we don't know, after few years, we may have aspirin as NSAID, antiplatelet, maybe a drug for dementia. So same drug and many uses. Some more examples of successful repositioning drugs of already approved. So the already approved, like duloxetine. So now you know that this is an antidepressant drug. Now the new indication for that, it can be used for musculoskeletal pain and fibromyalgia. Methotrexate, very interesting drug for and as an anti-cancer drug. And it is found to be useful for rheumatoid arthritis. Minoxidil was developed as antihypertensive drug. And if I remember correct, then it found to have a side effect of hair growth. And that clicked so the story. And then the minoxidil was then studied how it can be used for the hair loss. And now minoxidil 1% solution, 2% solution, that is very commonly used for the baldness, and it has become an important drug for the treating the hair loss. Sildenafil was originally tried for angina pectoris and also general hypertension, not particularly pulmonary hypertension. And sildenafil was found to have some effect for that. And but then in phase 1 clinical trials, it was realized that sildenafil is causing erectile dysfunction. So there was much interest in that, and so it was studied for the erectile dysfunction. And then you know the success story of it. the Viagra and the 2 billion cell, and it still continues to make huge cells, and there are many more other congeners developed. So even it is now, it is used for hypertension, but it is specifically used for pulmonary hypertension. Now, sometimes see how this causes confusion in minds of people who don't know different uses of the same drug. Few years back, I got a call from pharmacist in Mumbai, and he said, "Madam, there is a lady patient coming to me, and she has been prescribed Viagra. Now, I'm very confused why a lady patient has been given this sildenafil." So I asked him, what is the qualification of the doctor? So he said he's MD DM cardiology. And I said, okay, don't worry. That means this lady has a particular type of pulmonary hypertension, and that's why it has been given. So I really appreciate that pharmacist calling and seeing that this is not a mistake. By mistake, it is not given. So same drug having different uses definitely may cause some confusion in the supply chain and in the people who handle it, who don't know the newer uses of the old drug. Thalidomide, as we discussed, this created history. It was used for morning sickness in the pregnant females in Germany and UK. And then the children who were the kids, I mean the babies who were born to these ladies, either the limbs were not formed or they were ill formed, and this is called as phocomelia. And then this triggered the research. Why did this happen in so many ladies? Why did this happen in so many babies? And when retrospectively it was studied, it was realized all of them were given a thalidomide, which was an investigational drug, and by the doctors. And then it was realized that, okay, this is causing, the thalidomide has caused this effect. And that actually put the studies on the pregnant mice, pregnant rats, that got, because of this thalidomide tragedy, we started in new drug discovery process. We started studying the effect of the drugs on the pregnant rats or mice, pregnant animals. Till then, we had never thought that the drug would go and do some harm to the fetus. So teratogenicity was never realized actually till then. But because of thalidomide tragedy, all the thought processes started, and then the reproductive effects were also included in the new drug discovery preclinical studies. Till then, it was not. So this thalidomide was like, we said bye-bye to thalidomide, and it went off the shelf. And then but then thalidomide, the researchers never lost the interest in thalidomide because they knew this has a lot of potential. And so the studies continued. And it was found to be very useful to treat the skin lesions associated with leprosy. And as I said, for multiple myeloma and some other types of cancer, it is being investigated. So you never know that the drugs which are well forgotten, which have gone off the market and off our memory, they may come back one day and present themselves in a new form and do something very good for the humans. Zidovudine. This is a very sad story for zidovudine, that it was under investigation, but it failed clinical trials for various indications. It was tried. But then when 1980s HIV/AIDS came, then all these molecules, so there was worldwide research, what to use, what treatments to be found, what treatments to find for AIDS. And then zidovudine was also tried, and it found to be useful for HIV. And see, it became the first drug for HIV/AIDS. So the drug which failed trials for many cancer and many other indications which was tried, it became an important drug, the first drug to treat the incurable HIV/AIDS, which was, now we are talking of COVID. So HIV/AIDS was a pandemic that time in 1980s and 90s. And you know, one generation in Africa is totally wiped away because of AIDS. So zidovudine, or it's also called as azithromycin, that became the first drug for HIV/AIDS. So reposition drug, which had failed the clinical trials. Coming to the COVID-19 treatments, this repurposing, and we started talking much more about repurposing in India. It started coming in the news media also. Even common people started knowing much about it because of the COVID-19. We have no treatment even now. We had no treatment in March when it came in India. or it came in December in China. So everybody started using different types of drugs, right, from antivirals to the anti-acidity drugs and whatnot. From there, we got some clues, and then in a hurry, many of them were given emergency use authorization. And you know that the drugs like remdesivir. Remdesivir is a member of the oldest and most important classes of the drugs as nucleoside analog. So there are more than 30 of these types of drugs that have been approved for use in treating various viral infections, cancers, parasites, as well as bacterial and fungal infections. So they have broad spectrum activity. Remdesivir was studied for Ebola. Everybody remembers Ebola, right? So the West Africa, it had spread in West Africa and it had become a nightmare. So this Ebola virus infections, remdesivir was tried. So, but it showed very limited benefit and it could not become the drug for Ebola. Now, when COVID infection started, we started revisiting remdesivir. In the meanwhile, remdesivir had shown some effect on the other coronavirus. Everybody knows the COVID-19 is not the only virus. There is a family of coronaviruses. And so this had shown it had shown the inhibition of replication of other human coronaviruses associated with high morbidity in tissue cultures, including the acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus, SARS that is, and MERS, Middle East respiratory syndrome coronavirus in 2012. So efficacy in animal models has been demonstrated for the SARS and the MERS. So taking clue from this, the researchers did some clinical trials, small evidence we have against the coronavirus, the COVID-19 virus, SARS-CoV-2, and then they found some use, and therefore it got emergency use authorization in many countries, including India. And we used remdesivir. I'm sure everybody knows remdesivir, 5 doses, first by injection and 1 injection, and then followed by 5 days. Somewhere it was used as 10 days, but ICMR, according to their protocol, it was 5 days use. And it was rampantly used. In fact, I used to get so many calls to find out whether remdesivir is available here, remdesivir is, the patient needs it. And it became like the main drug to treat COVID for last 3 to 4 months. Now, unfortunately, WHO says that the remdesivir has very limited use, and it's not a drug of choice or something for COVID, needs more investigation. So that is the very latest news of this repurposed drug. Now, one thing is when we are giving emergency use authorization and are using this already approved drug in the country. So in India, we don't need to take another patent for that. So for another indication. So for repurposing, I mean, for the second indication, there is no need to take the patent, and so it can be immediately used. Tocilizumab, everybody must be knowing, it is a class of drugs known as interleukin-6 blockers, and it works by interleukin-6, a substance made by the body that causes inflammation. So some clinical trials went on, mainly the Covacta, and it was a logical thing actually to say, because in COVID-19, you know that there is an inflammatory storm and the cytokines play a very important role. And then what not happens, the blood clotting and pneumonia, everything happens, it is triggered by that. And the levels of CRP, reactive protein, interleukin-6, ferritin, everything rises. And that is the complete inflammatory picture we get from that. So it was logical to use tocilizumab for that. 2 clinical trials happened. But then now we know that tocilizumab, the company itself, they have announced that the tocilizumab has no particular use in COVID-19. But till then, people had spent a lot of money on tocilizumab and it was used. Favipiravir is a modified pyrazine analog that was initially approved for therapeutic use in resistant cases of influenza. So this was actually first used in Japan. It has approval first in 2014. This was used to treat the cases of influenza, that is resistant influenza. So the antiviral targets RNA-dependent RNA polymerase enzymes, which are necessary for the transcription and replication of viral genomes. So then when COVID started, this was also investigated, and it was found that it can be useful to some extent in COVID, for the COVID virus. And it was also investigated for the treatment of Ebola, Lassa virus, and now COVID. Has limited use, and it has shown some rapid viral clearance, but still I would say it has limited use. And now its use has again reduced. This was used orally for the COVID-19 patients, and there were like nine tablets, 18 tablets patients had to take each day. So that was a very high dose. The company Glenmark had launched it in India. I won't say azithromycin as repurposed drug, but the studies show that azithromycin, well-known antibiotic, as all of us know, it has shown useful in respiratory infections, and it also has shown some antiviral activity against some RNA virus. So we are using azithromycin in COVID for two purposes. It is kind of repurposing, but not the perfect example of repurposing, to counteract the secondary bacterial infections, if any, as well as azithromycin is showing some antiviral activity, and therefore it might be useful. Same story with doxycycline, and doxycycline, azithromycin is preferred in the pregnant women or in children. So it is an antibiotic, but also has shown some effect in the viruses. But otherwise, it is nothing wrong in using this type of drugs, because there could be secondary bacterial infections. Ivermectin, everybody knows it is a drug from 1980s, and it is useful for various parasitic infections, as well as, so it is used as anthelmintic, and it is also used in the form of lotion and cream for the lice. And ivermectin is an inhibitor of COVID-19 causative virus in vitro. So you must appreciate, ever since COVID started, the researchers have not stopped working, and they have been trying to use each and every drug that they have in hand and trying to see in vitro if there is any activity against COVID-19. So this drug, an old drug, an anthelmintic, and for as an anti-lice drug, it has shown some effect, antiviral effect, COVID-19 against COVID-19, and treatment, the single treatment able to effect 5,000-fold reduction in the virus at 48 hours in the cell culture. So this has shown some promise. And therefore, you must be knowing 1 or 2 months back, the ivermectin, everybody started using Bandy tablets or Bandy Plus. Ivermectin and albendazole. So this was used by many for the COVID-19, but there is no particular. So this is kind of a hurried repurpose, but it is not an officially approved indication yet. Everything in COVID-19 is on experimental basis. But I realized that there's nothing wrong in using ivermectin for people as a preventive thing, because otherwise also it will help as anthelmintic. Hydroxychloroquine, a long story, we'll cut it short. Everybody knows it is used for it is an anti-malarial drug, as well as used for lupus erythematosus or the rheumatoid arthritis and other chronic inflammations, which are kind of autoimmune disorders. And it is hydroxychloroquine has been studied for the treatment and prevention of coronavirus. So FDA gave approval to emergency use authorization, and we all started using hydroxychloroquine. But of course, those people with age 55 plus, they had to do the ECG, because hydroxychloroquine is known to have some cardiac side effects. So hydroxychloroquine was used 5 days course, 200 mg or something, 200 mg twice a day. And this was used first for all health workers and then for everyone. So then the ICMR as well as all corporations incorporated it into their regimen. And this was used for a long time. Even today, at many places from the government setup, this has been still used. But then on June 15th, US FDA cancelled this use, and WHO also backed that, showing that hydroxychloroquine is unlikely to be effective for treatment of COVID-19, and some serious side effects such as irregular heartbeats were reported. Now, when I look at this hydroxychloroquine thing, since it is anti-inflammatory, we are using it in arthritis, then I think that even if it was used, and even if it is going to be used or is being used in COVID-19, it's not a problem, because in COVID-19, some inflammation is always triggered. So this, even if whether it has antiviral or not, but it can have some anti-inflammatory use, And so it is okay to use hydroxychloroquine in COVID, in non-COVID cases. I don't know how much it will be useful as a preventive. So first it came as a preventive in healthcare workers, etc. And all nurses, all doctors actually took the course of hydroxychloroquine. I myself took hydroxychloroquine, and I must tell you that I had COVID in end of June, and I was asymptomatic, totally mild infection. I was at home, and I just took vitamin C and zinc, etc. But I was given hydroxychloroquine by our corporation, and I took it religiously, thinking that it's okay. Now they are given, let me take it. So I took the course of hydroxychloroquine HCQ for COVID in July. Now come to October, and end of October, I got for attack of reactive arthritis. I mean, the doctor diagnosed it as reactive arthritis. And he said, okay, you had COVID, and so this is a late complication of that COVID causing inflammation inside you. And he again gave me HCQ. So now I'm taking HCQ for last 3 weeks as an anti-inflammatory to treat the arthritis. And I'm better, of course. And hopefully this is just a temporary phase. But COVID causing inflammation, and so hydroxychloroquine being used for it is, that's why I said it is kind of a logical repurposing. Dexamethasone, I won't call it again a repurpose, but yes, it is a steroid, good old steroid, very well known. And it is a wonderful drug. It has shown excellent use in COVID-19 to treat the inflammation. Statins, this is kind of interesting, because statins, as we all know, that this is anti-cholesterol drug, but it has shown potential to defend the COVID-19 patients against the systemic inflammatory response produced by the COVID virus. And so anti-inflammatory effect this is showing, and there is evidence suggesting that statins also exert antiviral activity. So when I looked at this, I was not sure about statins, because I know all other drugs in COVID-19 which are used as a repurposed drug. But a lot of research actually is going on currently to find out the potential of statin in COVID-19. And there are many papers already published also. And so this may be, again, statin. It might be a good idea. I see some physicians have already started using atorvastatin for the patients who are coming out of COVID, who are getting who are finishing their 14 days treatment and who are mild cases. Atorvastatin is given for a month. For what purpose? I'm sure this is kind of because to stop any inflammation and for antiviral, to continue the antiviral activity. So this is again very interesting area, statins being used for this purpose. Latest news in COVID-19 now, nitazoxanide oxide. Everybody must be knowing it is a broad spectrum anti-parasitic and broad spectrum antiviral drug also to treat helminthic, protozoal and viral infections. So these are available. It is found to inhibit replication of broad range of respiratory viruses in cell cultures, including COVID-19. And then it has shown like it is useful against MERS, etc., and also suppresses the interleukin-6. So hypothetically, yes, it is logical that it can have a potential antiviral effect. Now, Institute of Chemical Technology in Mumbai recently did some research on this and got excellent results for nitazoxanide oxide. So, lot of potential for these molecule also. Now, we discussed about various drugs which are used for the which are repurposed for the COVID-19. I did not take example of famotidine, but yes, famotidine, a lot of research is going on famotidine to repurpose it for COVID. Now, even the vaccine being repurposed. So this is a great example that BCG. Now, why we thought of BCG, which can be useful or can be repurposed for COVID-19? Because the number of cases or the severity of infection was much lesser in those countries where BCG vaccine, the population has taken the BCG vaccine. And that gave some clue. And therefore, now it is proposed that off-target protective effect. So it seems like BCG protects us not only against the TB. It doesn't protect us against TB, of course, only the childhood TB and brain TB in early years of life. Later on, no. But it has shown some potential that it can be used. It is giving us protective effect against some respiratory tract infections, not caused by Mycobacterium tuberculosis, but others, and neonatal sepsis. So it is proposed that these off-target protective effects of the BCG are mediated by the general long-term boosting of innate immune mechanism, and also called as trained innate immunity. So recent studies indicate that both COVID-19 incidence and total deaths are strongly associated with the presence or absence of national mandatory BCG vaccination program, and encourages the initiation of several clinical studies with the expectation that revaccination with BCG could reduce the incidence and severity of COVID-19. And this will be very safe. We were just talking about the vaccines. I listened to the last part of the earlier lecture. So we have so many hurdles. I mean, the vaccine cost, vaccine availability, vaccine storage. These are huge challenges before us. If the BCG vaccine is going to show the potential, then there is nothing like it. We will be happy to revaccinate ourselves with BCG, one dose intradermal, not a problem. So again, research is going on not only in India but worldwide to see whether we can use same BCG or we can have to need to modify it. But so far, nothing constructive has come out of it. But who knows? In few months' time, we may get news about the BCG vaccine. I don't want to talk much more about it, but you all might have read on WhatsApp and in social media or in the news, methylene blue being tried in COVID treatment. And those people who have tried it, they are so strong advocates for it. It is methylene blue is a phenothiazine and it is used in methemoglobinemia. It reduces ferric to ferrous, and it is used as a single dose infusion shot. So many people have tried methylene blue in COVID treatment, but one should not take it unless there is a good evidence. Now, this was all about the COVID-19 repurposing, and earlier we spoke about different drugs which are good examples of the repurposing. Now, specifically for cancer, there is a lot of interest, and repurpose drugs for cancer treatment is a big area, is a huge area in research, because cancer is incurable and so many different molecules, herbals, everything we are trying for cancer. Metformin, I want to give you an example of just one drug. Metformin, as you know, like aspirin, is one of the old drugs, and it is a commonly prescribed drug for type 2 diabetes. So we all know that it reduces the sugar levels by acting on the liver and not on pancreas. So it inhibits the hepatic gluconeogenesis, reduces insulin resistance, improves glycemic control, and decreases the inflammatory response, thus avoiding the potential tumor promoting effect. So now, because it reduces the inflammatory response, in vitro and in vivo studies have further demonstrated that the metformin might have direct anti-tumor activity by inhibiting the cancer cell proliferation. And there is, again, like aspirin, lot of research is going on metformin, and all different trials have been done for different indications. So all these characteristics make metformin an ideal drug for cancer prevention. So let's see what comes. But if you just Google for metformin repurposing, you will find a list of indications for which metformin has been tried and is being tried. There is a whole book on drug repurposing in cancer therapy, different approaches and different applications. So those of you who are interested, you can go through this book and may give you some ideas for your research. So these generic drugs have shown anti-cancer activity in at least one randomized trial of one type of cancer. So aspirin, cimetidine, clarithromycin, propranolol, disulfiram, itraconazole, etodolac, nitroglycerin, pravastatin, verapamil, chloroquine, low molecular weight heparin, and arsenine. So this is just a short list, but then there are many more drugs also, as I said, we are trying to repurpose it for the cancer treatment. So there are many possibilities, and these one drug may become like a Bahurupi and has different roles and has different purposes. So we may call this as a super drug. So like as we say, somebody a Superman or a Superwoman, they're doing everything themselves. So maybe we'll have one drug, say aspirin, for 5 different indications, metformin for 3 different indications. So we don't know what is going to happen, because the way repurposing research is going on, it is very, what I say, a very lucrative thing and very attractive, kind of very attractive and very lucrative area, and we may get wonderful results. So it may happen, I was just imagining the situation when I was writing some articles on it, that it may happen that in the same household, there might be one drug, maybe at a different dose, maybe a different company making it, taking by 2 family members, but for different indications. So it is very much possible. This may cause, is it going to cause some confusion? It may cause some confusion. As I gave you example of a pharmacist asking about the sildenafil, it may cause some confusion because of lack of knowledge in some people, possible. And it may lead to some dispensing errors, possible, but then we need to educate the people that one drug has different uses. Even metformin, I can tell you, metformin is very old drug, very well known for diabetes, but everybody must be knowing that it is also repurposed for PCOD. And just like this pharmacist calling me from Mumbai, I had another call from Railway Hospital, and he said that metformin has been given to a lady, and she doesn't have diabetes. Madam, why this is given? Is my doctor making a mistake? Shall I call him and say? Within the hospital only doctor was there. So I said, maybe whose prescription it is. So it was a gynecologist, and he said that gynecologist has given this prescription. So I said, okay, don't worry, this must have been given to her for PCOD purpose. So this type of, educating our fellow colleagues, educating our healthcare workers at all levels will be important if the repurposing becomes the norm, and if we have many drugs coming into market with different new, if we are getting old drugs with new indications in the market. So there is a lot of future for repurposed drugs. There is easy to understand the relation between the drugs and diseases and specific biomarkers. It can give treatment for almost many or rare diseases, increased opportunities in R&D. It boosts the clinical trials, reduces the efforts to study the old drugs. So this is like our usual de novo drug discovery and development, which takes at least 10 years or 11 years, and of course billions of dollars, but it has a low success rate. You know what is the success rate in the de novo drug discovery process? It has huge cost, time consuming. Drug repurposing comes here, and we just start here, and then we go to the drug registration, and drug is in the market. So it is really a wonderful shortcut. And I feel myself, when I was studying all this, that we should researchers are looking at all the side effect profiles of each and every drug, and side effects give the best clue, apart from the very high-tech research through bioinformatics, etc. But the side effects themselves give a very good clue that what effect, what therapeutic action this drug may have, and how we can use it in another indication. So in conclusion, drug repurposing is a smart, fast-track drug discovery process with tremendous potential, and we can find new weapons to fight our old battles. And we must do everything, and you are all maybe doing the research. I'm not in the hardcore research, as I said. So if your research area, if you are already on some track where you are doing the research, but I appeal to you that look at this area freshly, and look at where you can do the research for already known molecules. And that will be really very interesting and exciting if you find something new for the old purpose. We are all working, and we are all oriented only for one client of our profession, and existence of entire pharmacy profession, medical profession, nursing profession is for patient. And we can do everything that is possible. Somebody will do research, people like me will do consumer education or training of pharmacists to make them counselor. But all of us are only working with one purpose, that we want to better the lives of our patients. We are working for the public health. And so my good wishes to you to work in this area. And thank you very much again for the kind invitation.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for delivering such an informative session and interesting stories behind all the drug repurposing. And we have certain questions from the participants. One of them is there any clinical trial needed for repurposed drugs?
Yes, clinical trials are needed in the patients. So maybe phase 1 trial we can avoid, but phase 2, 3, 4, yes, they are needed. So that much time will be taken. So, but it will be still few lesser years. Now we did not do long clinical trials or usual lengthy clinical trials for remdesivir or tocilizumab because it was to be given emergency use authorization. So that was skipped. But in normal process, yes, the clinical trials will be required to see the efficacy in the patients. In human volunteers, we already seen, we know the safety profile, so not a problem. But in patients, yes, we have to see.
Ma'am, one more question. Let's say we have certain drug right now we are using for repurposing for COVID, but can that be marketed for that same purpose?
I could not listen to what you said for COVID.
Uh, Ma'am, right now we are using certain repurposed drug for the COVID, but can those drugs be marketed as a treatment for COVID because they have been used for that indication?
No, not yet. They have to undergo the entire procedure. This was only emergency use authorization right now, right? So, if that drug has to get approval for COVID-19 as a permanent approval, then they have to undergo the extensive clinical trials, phase 2, 3, and 4. Then only they can go to FDA or the other drugs controller and get the approval. Not now. They cannot get right now the marketing approval for the drugs. This is only emergency use authorization, so it has a lot of restrictions.
So, ma'am, can we say that repurposed drug we only use it for certain period of time when they are needed, or else if we want to market them, then entire process will have to go through it?
This is only specifically we are talking about COVID. Say aspirin. Aspirin was well researched for its anti-platelet effect, and clinical trials were done, and the approval was sought. Now it is a permanent approval. We are using aspirin forever as anti-platelet drug. Only in case of COVID, we are talking that as emergency use, and because of the situation. But then it has to undergo, all these drugs have to undergo the clinical trials. To get the permanent approval.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for delivering such a wonderful session, and it
Thank
was
you.
very informative and interesting.
Thank you.
Ma'am, Ruby ma'am, there will be a one question
Mhm.
Yeah.
in your chat box. WhatsApp.
Uh,
Kindly check.
oh, uh, just a minute. Yes. Can we get patent for repurposed drug for new use?
In India, it is not required actually. For the same drug, for the new indication, patent is not required. So there will be that way there is less incentive because you do in other countries you can take the patent. In India, for second indication, third indication, you don't need to take the patent. But in other countries, in most of the Western countries, you get the patent for the next indication.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for responding to our queries.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for the kind invite and wish you all the best for the remaining program.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you.